Hello and welcome to the very first GigCX Decoded podcast. Dive into the wonderful world of gig-based customer service, or as we like to call it, GigCX. It's brought to you by Limitless. I have to say that we are the world's leading provider of GigCX. That's not just me saying that. And I am your host, Chris Dumpleton. I'm the Senior Vice President of Sales here at Limitless. What is GigCX? GigCX, or gig-based customer experience, enables businesses to crowdsource customer support by routing digital inquiries to passionate brand experts. Now, that's the product line. That's what it's all about. That is the gig. Sorry, couldn't help that. And today, for the very first episode, there's two people I know very well, but those listening may not know so well, but they are the founders of Limitless, my two bosses. So this will be nice to them. And that's Roger Beadle and Megan Neale. Roger, Megan, it's good to have you on the show. I haven't seen you in minutes, but how are you guys?
Fabulous. Thanks for having us, Chris. Super excited.
Thanks for the invite.
Well, that's it. It was a bit of a busman's holiday on the first one, but we need to get this thing, started. So this is our first one. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to dive into our GigCX industry report. That's something that we do every year. Talks a lot about the facts and figures of gig-based customer service. But I thought before we do that, I'm going to throw you a bit of a curveball, because obviously we've rehearsed a little bit for this, but I haven't told you that I'm going to do this part. But I always get fascinated when you describe where this all comes from. And what I'd like, if it's okay, is just to ask you the $1 million question. You're the founders of Limitless, so why on earth did you form it? Roger, what do you reckon?
Thanks for that curveball, Chris. Well, I mean, having spent 25 years, each of us, in the customer service industry, predominantly in the outsourced contact center industry, building and managing those call centers, we just felt that there had to be a better way that we could provide amazing customer experiences. So yeah, I mean, as entrepreneurs, having built and sold a contact center business previously, we wanted to build a new company, the two of us, back in 2015, when we started thinking about what that new company might look like. And we were, considering, as you do, what do we know about, where's our expertise and experience, and it is in the CX industry. So we were then beginning to think about two things. Where do we see the future of the industry going, and what were the biggest kind of problems, or the biggest challenges? So I guess probably I'll split this up with Megan. I'll talk a bit about what we saw with some of the future and potential growth areas of the industry. And maybe Megan, if you sort of cover off the big challenges as we saw them, and kind of interesting to think about how some of those predictions have become a reality, actually. So, I mean, when we were first thinking of a new business in this space, we were fascinated by the growth of marketplaces like Uber, Airbnb, eBay, that were working in terms of huge scale growth, global growth, all fundamentally working to provide amazing and better customer experiences in their industries, but all built on the foundation of trust. So that was something. We were really excited about the growth of freelancing. So even back then, with the emergence of these platforms that were enabling people to access work in different ways, we could see that the future of work was becoming very different. This kind of move from kind of fixed working models to more kind of fluid, agile working models.
Yeah.
And look, growth in messaging. The world is moving to WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger and everything else. And we could see that the customer service industry was going to go that way. But if it did go that way, as we predicted, it was going to need a much more kind of agile workforce. And then finally, I guess, in terms of these kind of growth areas, we could see the emergence of automation, AI, robotics, but we wanted to find a way where it could augment people working within the CX space to be able to provide better customer service on behalf of the customers. So they were some of the growth areas that we could see that were, helped us kind of formulate the idea for Limitless.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, all true. I think when people ask me why did I co-found Limitless, the second question they ask me is, why did you choose Roger as a founder, and why did he choose you?
This is a big. This is now
the
a big
reveal.
I've definitely not heard that one, but yeah, go on.
Well, the thing is, I cannot think of anyone better to run a business with. So if you want to make you blush, but we genuinely are very lucky to complement each other, and we learn from each other every single day. And it's an amazing opportunity to be able to work with someone, build something with someone you truly, truly respect. So, and to have the same vision. And I think Roger's just articulated the opportunity we saw. But also there were some really big problems that we just felt very unsatisfied that we hadn't solved in our entire careers running these operations. And, the access to talent is getting tougher and tougher.
Right.
Really hard to find great people who wanted to then stay. The amount that we can afford to pay people in a contact center has always been minimum wage, and that's not set to change. Therefore, really tough to keep great people and show them a path to progression and give them a good living standard through their salary. And then suddenly something that's just been exacerbated with the pandemic, the lack of agility and the flexibility within the workforce. All enterprises now need to be able to absolutely stand up resources in line with customer demand, whatever's going on in the world. So for us, those problems we really wanted to solve, we wanted to solve them together, and it's been great fun. And then being able to build a team, a brilliant team. I genuinely feel, I know you do too, that we've got the best team in the business to take the world by storm and educate everyone on how gig can be a game changer.
Well, my own personal perspective on all those things is, my first ever job was in a contact center, as you know, because I told you that when I first interviewed, and so we can all relate to being customers. We all come from the industry, but we're all really used to using these sorts of platforms, like you mentioned, whether it's Uber, or Airbnb, or eBay, where there's the relationship between somebody who's got a question and someone who's got an answer, and then bringing them together, and messaging being what everybody uses. I mean, frankly, if my parents use it on a day-to-day basis and we have 5-minute conversations over 2 days, just shows you how, what the uptick is. So, yeah, and fantastic. Well, that's a good intro. Sorry for that one. I thought I'd just throw that as a bigger, wider introduction to the whole podcast and having you on the show. So we're going to get into the report. Now, a little bit about the report was it's the only one, as far as we know, that's based entirely on gig-based customer service. So we've been doing this for quite a while now. And as part of that report, we look at every aspect from the current state, the views on GigCX and the global industry. The CX is a category all by its own, involving everything to do with technology, people, different ways of working. So getting the views from people in that industry, we surveyed, this time was 400 CX leaders, over 600 actual experts, so GigCX experts. And then we sat 16 people down, tried to get a few more, but 16 were the ones that came up for it, across various industries, technology, retail, e-com, food, sports, consumer goods, healthcare, and marketplaces. So big industry veteran leaders who, have a really strong opinion about this. So we got views from wider people in the CX industry. We have views from the actual experts doing the work, and then we spoke to the senior leaders, brought all that together. And if you're interested, those listening or watching us, you can go over to limitlesstech.com and find the bigger report there and dive into all the facts and figures. But what today we're going to do is we're going to dive into a few of the sales. So what I thought I'd do is lead the conversation, and I'm going to pick out a few the key things from my perspective, and we're going to have a general chit chat about them. So first one, why should CX leaders care about GigCX? 72% of customer services managers have added or plan to add gig talent to their contact center or customer service operations within the next 2 years. Now, 2015, when you were founding the company, if you saw a stat like that, you would have bitten, I wouldn't say bitten my arm off, but that relationship's gone. But that they're having people talk in that language is just outstanding from a evolution and pace of change around what GigCX is all about. So why do you think that is?
Well, I think, from the awareness perspective of GigCX and the way of working since founding the business back in 2016, launching the platform in 2017, it's been an amazing rise. We've got huge companies now working with us on our platform, benefiting from the GigCX model. So I think, the industry, whilst it is a huge in terms of the amount of money that's spent in terms of running customer service operations globally, it's actually quite a small industry in terms of awareness of these kinds of emerging models. And when something really gets traction, we saw last year McKinsey writing about, is GigCX the next big thing in customer care? We've seen analysts like Gartner and Forrester talking about GigCX, etc. So I think, this kind of raising awareness in the marketplace. I think ultimately, though, from the reasons, and if we bring it back to our report, one of the most important reasons that they were giving, the CX leaders were giving about why they were interested in GigCX was access to talent. So the kind of the number one reason was access to talent. And if we think about what's going on with the Gen Zs, the millennials, the younger of those, by 2025, 75% of the workforce, as we know, is going to be made up by Gen Zs and millennials. They're looking to work in a different way. This has been accelerated by the pandemic, with people looking to work in different ways. What that means is it's becoming even harder to find people to work in call centers, people that are willing to travel to a contact center, physical location, work 40 to 50 hours a week, be kind of strapped into the headset in that kind of traditional way of working. So it's becoming really difficult. So by finding a way to offer CX leaders a global talent pool to operate within, I think that's something that's really attracting them to the model.
Yeah.
And I think just to build on to that, during the survey and the research, big theme coming around access to talent for sure, bigger than the last 2 years. The second big theme was around flexible working. Now, this started post-pandemic as I need a BCP plan. Everyone needed a disaster recovery plan in case of big events, but actually it's more than that. It's more than being able to cope with a complete shift in an outage. It's being able to genuinely be able to flex resourcing at an intra-day and intra-week level, and being able to mirror your cost base with the demand from your customers. So that ability to continue to invest in your traditional model, but save money by deploying a GigCX model, allows you to deliver on both of those things. Really gives you that real flexibility.
Yeah, it's funny that, when I'm, in where are we? My daughter, she's 8, so 10 years time, and I'll sit down and go, right. So, Daddy used to go in an office, and we used to go to a building. We used to sit down 5 days a week and work 40, 50, sometimes 60, sometimes more hours a week. And that we did. I can just, she'll just be looking at me like, why would you do that? I mean, it's just a bit weird, and it's just that pace of change of how the new generation coming forward will expect to be able to work, and that's when I say a scary stat, I don't mean it probably scary because I'm over 40 now, but like when in a couple of years time, 75% of everyone's going to be in Gen Z millennials, and that's how they expect to work. And this concept of there was something I read the other day which really struck with me, which was rather than bring the work, I got it wrong way around. Rather than bring the people to the work, which is the old school model that we've all kind of grown up in, you take the work to the people, and technology enables you to do that and distribute work and ask people to work in a more flexible way. So for me, that's what's it always resonated, that phrase. So cool, right? So that's good. Great opener. I think we've done well there. So this is our third year now doing the report. It was our stake in the moon as we landed on this planet of GigCX. I'll stop that analogy, which is what we wanted to do, which was that it's gig as a term covers a multitude of different verticals, and GigCX is our one around contact centers and customer experience. And we felt like what we needed to do was go into more detail to explain it and to give people something that, because there wasn't anything that they could go to understand more about it. So over the 3 years, this is what do you think's changed? What's been the main thing for you that stood out in this year's report?
Yeah, I was really fascinated actually because I mean it's bigger and better every year. You get more content, more interesting views, and also the themes that come out evolve. I wouldn't say they've been shifted incredibly, but the big thing for me, if I think about the takeaways, you've already mentioned the big stat that over 70% of customer service managers plan to add gig talent in some way to their customer service operation. But I think it's then the next layer down in terms of what does that mean? What type of work will the gig talent be doing?
Right.
And I think 2 years ago, the sentiment and the view was that gig talent can actually sort of do level 1 type inquiries, if you're familiar with that terminology.
Explain that a bit more, just for everyone. So level 1.
Level 1 type inquiries, general inquiries, how-to, things that don't
Right.
need access to systems, things that don't need access to personal data, for example.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's like super simple, super easy. But what we're seeing now from the work we're doing with a lot of these CX leaders is that actually a significant proportion want gig to do more because it's working so well. And they want them to be fully accredited and qualified to handle certain aspects of personal data, and they want to give them access to systems. So for me, the major takeaway was over a third of the people we spoke to thought that actually the gig agents and experts could handle either all aspects of the service, so every line of business, for example, and over 60% of the inquiries that are received in, which I think is phenomenal. So, and to your point earlier, it's about the accelerating that pace of change. It's not a slow evolution here. We're seeing things genuinely step change quarter on quarter, year on year.
So yeah, that trust has really improved. If people are considering this for additional contact types and more complexity, it just feels like trust is improving in the model. Roger, what do you think?
I definitely agree with regards to trust. Again, people are seeing the results of others that are already working in this way. As I say, it's a small industry. That kind of sharing of that information and that knowledge and that curiosity to now actually try is not just based on pure innovation. It's actually based on fact of what's working within that industry with other companies, other competitors at this time. And that obviously begins to attract different kinds of organizations. I think other things that are going on over the last, that we're seeing and over the last couple of years in the GigCX space, we're seeing new companies enter the space, new competitors, if you like, to Limitless. But what we're kind of seeing as well is that there is going to be a little bit of confusion in the marketplace as to what is, if you like, pure GigCX, which is very much what Limitless is about with regards to how we operate, how the platform works, to other organizations who are badging what they're offering as gig, but actually it's really akin to a 0-hour employment kind of contract.
Yeah.
in our world, if we go right back to that vision and the mission that we talked about up front, we absolutely are wanting to tap into people who are genuinely passionate advocates, real product users of the brands.
Mm-hmm.
Want to enable them to work on a pure gig way, i.e. freelancing model. We want them to be able to be rewarded for every task they do. So not signing up for shifts and hourly rates, but actually just coming onto the platform and working perhaps on one or two tasks, and having the freedom of choice to do that, and working in a completely unscheduled way. So those are some of the things that we're seeing, this kind of bit of muddying of the water. So I think that's going to be something that we need to make sure as an industry we get clarity on. And then just lastly, I would say, we couldn't not say that we're going to see the signs of the macroeconomic environment beginning to kind of, I think, fuel the gig economy, because the world over, you've got inflation rising faster than obviously salary growth, and what that means is that the cost of living the world over, people are going to be really stretched. And what we tend to see then in that scenario is people looking for other ways to add additional income. So people that are working, in employment, looking for that kind of secondary additional income. And I think we'll talk a little bit more in a bit about, as we go on to thinking about how the gig experts work and how much work they do. But effectively giving people that opportunity to earn a little extra money, I think, is what we're seeing. And I think that's even going to accelerate the amount of resource that's looking to work on these platforms. Now, that's only a great thing for the organizations that want to, enable a gig model, because they're going to have even more talent kind of coming to the platforms looking to work in this way.
Yeah, good. Yeah, great point. I'm going to pull out, it's a good segue actually, because we're going to go into a bit of the report now, but that point about who the kind of experts are and how much they work, and this whole potential confusion that's in the industry about companies operating models effectively rebadging what gig is. There's a number of aspects which can make that very confusing for people. So let's talk a bit about some of the main themes in the report, because I think this helps to clarify some of the components of what pure gig is in our language, and I think that'd be a good thing to do. So look, the first one that I noticed that was prevalent was that GigCX experts are not full-time. A really important point when you consider potential confusion about other models of this. So what's your feeling on that?
Yeah, well, if we pick out a couple of the stats from the report, just to give that context, we found that 79% of people that work in GigCX are doing 10 hours or less on average a week.
10 hours or less, yeah.
Yeah, and that 80% of them are gig or freelance part-time. So they're working, less than 10 hours, they're freelance and they're part-time. Now, okay, so why is that good? Actually, we're really pleased about this stat. This is as we would have designed it. And what's great is because people get to choose, it is actually coming as we would hope. Because when we used to run contact centers, what we would find is that you could get burnout, that you get that fatigue, that kind of repetition of responding to customers, which then leads into this kind of bland, kind of vanilla experience that people get when they contact brands. So actually, little and often, but high quality is what we really wanted. So actually, people coming on, and if you think about what we've done, or what the gig model allows you to do, it flips it round. Rather than someone coming to work in a shift and a schedule when they've been rostered.
Yeah.
On a gig platform, they're choosing to log on whenever they want to.
Yeah.
Imagine the psychological, if you're coming to work when you're ready to come to work, as opposed to you're coming to do a shift that you've been rostered maybe a week, 3 weeks, 4 weeks in advance. Yeah. So just imagine that. And then you're bringing your A game to the customer service to the customers that you're going to be helping and supporting. So I think it little and often is what we're seeing, and I think that's really interesting that that's what's actually bearing out, and it's bearing out at scale. You need 5,000 kind of users now on Limitless, so it's really bearing out at scale.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I think the difference between choosing to work versus having to work. You think about anything that you do. If you do it because you want to do it, you're gonna get a better experience out of that. And if you think, but there's the subtle things about. If you will remember back in the day, some of the training you used to get as a customer service agent on the phone, always say smile on the smile because the customer can hear it. Well, you magnify that by the fact that if the experts are turning up to work when they want to that's the equivalent. But in my opinion, that's going to be bigger. Right. So the next one I want to talk about, which is one that Megan, I know you're already passionate about, is that GigCX improves the experts' well-being. Fascinating, this topic. What did you make of that?
Yeah, no, I was really, really thrilled that this came out as a very strong feature and theme in the report. And as you say, I mean, I think over 80%, about 83% said that GigCX had a positive impact on their mental well-being. And there's really kind of three big themes that support that. One is, as we've talked a lot about already today, is the freedom that people have to engage and work when they want to work, and that's a real positive factor.
Yeah.
Financial independence, so really giving people control over their ability to earn, and then just easy accessibility to work, so making it super easy so people can fit it into their daily lives, and reduces a lot of that stress pressure with other things that people may need to do. A few examples of experts are, carers of people in their family, and of course need to prioritize that, and this gives them a good fit. I just love all the stories. We're blessed to have so many people stories in our business, but in particular, I can recall sort of three key people that have really resonated with us. One is Mary in the Philippines, works on one of our large mobile clients. And she's used the earnings from Limitless to pay for her dream wedding, which is phenomenal. And she just said that wouldn't be possible without it. We've got Adam in Glasgow, who works for one of our tech support clients, and he's saving for investing in special times with his children, and really, really making a difference and making memories for them. And then two of the most wonderful cohorts I think we have across our whole crowds are the sort of semi-retired and retired pool. People kind of choosing from that 55, 60 plus to take a step back from the working world, still have a lot to give, still have amazing skills. And John has been on the platform for a while. He's a retired IT professional, and his feedback consistently is it just gives him a sense of purpose, gives him a reason for being. Right. Simply loves helping people. And these stories come through thick and fast, and everybody has their own personal journey, but it's wonderful that we're able to support so many people.
That is amazing. I love that. It's hard to put your finger on sometimes the benefits that you bring, because you can get so caught up sometimes in the more overt metrics, but when you've got somebody on the expert side saying it gives me a sense of purpose, I mean, bottle that and sell it. Brilliant. Yeah. Absolutely love it. Great one. Right, we're going to move on to the other side of the coin here, which is the actual CX leaders themselves. So this is a big one that came out of the report, which was they feel that it's inevitable. Now, choice of language is crucial here, because when when you founded Limitless back in 2016 as a brand new way of dealing with customer contacts in this entirely different way, to be there 6 years later and have CX leaders say that they feel it's now inevitable. I mean, you don't get much more reassurance than that you've picked the right horse to back, or company to found, to extend the metaphor. So what did you make of that one, Roger?
Well, obviously, we're really massively pleased and maybe a little surprised just on how quick it's taken to create a new category in this space. You know, it's been 20, 25 years, the traditional contact centers, we've seen that evolution. And there hasn't really been any kind of major transformation in terms of how customer service is provided, how it's actually resourced.
Yeah.
So this is absolutely a huge transformation, and to see that from inception, when we had created the platform in 2016 and launched in 2017, to see the acceleration, of course, with the pandemic, that's fueled the drive for enterprise companies looking for more resilience, more, as well as the more agility and flexibility that they were crying out for anyway. We talked earlier, you know, about the talent pool and the other benefits that they're looking for and problems that they want to solve. But fundamentally, this kind of drive has been incredible. And, you know, the stat I think in the report was that 84% did say that, you know, that, as you say, the GigCX is inevitable, which is incredible. It's a huge majority. And then I think it's worth picking out a quote from Mike Flanagan, who's a VP for customer service at Microsoft, hugely influential in the industry, very experienced in this space, and very flattered that he contributed to the report, but also in the quotes that he put forward. I won't read you the full one. You should download and look at the GigCX report to see more from Mike. But he actually said that it's in their view, Microsoft's view, it's no longer a pilot or a proof of concept. It's a concrete idea that companies are incorporating into the future of work. So really powerful, and absolutely what we're seeing now for those organizations that have been working on our platform and others for the last few years. There's no longer, does it work? Can it work? It's now working at scale. And now the next steps are, what more can it do? Got it.
Yeah. Well, that's an amazing introduction to my next question, or the next finding, which was the big one that came out was the untapped scope of GigCX is bigger than we think. It needs a bit of explaining, just from those listening, about what potentially people think GigCX is there to do versus what it could do. Now, there's two sides to that. There's sort of a level of understanding around. There's also what have you guys got planned as owners of this business to be able to allow experts to do more. So perhaps you could touch on that.
Yeah, no, really happy to. And I think, you know, there's two people we need to ask, two groups of people we need to ask this question to, in terms of what can GigCX truly achieve in the sort of short and medium term. One is the CX leaders, and they're telling us, as with Mike Flanagan, they want to do more, but also the GigCX experts. And over 90% of them said that they are really keen to take on more complex customer queries. You know, they want to be able to add more value. They want to be able to provide a full resolution to consumers and customers when they're engaging with them. And that means giving them access to different systems, giving them access to different data. So our ethos here at Limitless is we're working towards an environment where a GigCX expert can actually do anything that an agent can, anything that a call center agent can. And it will take some time for the market to mature in terms of their appreciation and understanding that that's possible. That's largely the big dependency, really. There isn't really a technical dependency. There isn't really a dependency on any other form of compliance. It is just a comfort level with the model. And we talk with Marijn Tabouche, who's the EVP at Genesys. Some of you will know Genesys is the market-leading contact center CX orchestration
Genesis,
platform worldwide. I've probably got that definition wrong, so sorry, Genesis. But his view is that customers the world over would prefer to take product advice from other customers. It's as simple as that. You want to engage with someone who can empathize with you, and you want that person to be armed with the correct tools to fully support you and resolve any questions that you may have. So it's really about tapping into that empathy that other customers have, but through GigCX giving them all and empowering them in the same way as a contact center agent is. So getting the best of both worlds, really.
I've actually, I don't even know why this didn't dawn on me, but I've got a use case for this, not use case, an example, right? Where, so I've got a wonderful TV that's massive, and my dear mother was over at the weekend wanting to watch the tennis on it. Would it work? Could I get into the famous British TV streaming of BBC iPlayer, right? Could I get into it? No. For some reason, it would not log on. It was only when I was talking to my friend Sunday, and we were just chit chat about stuff. And I said, it was really annoying yesterday because my mum wanted to watch tennis, and it wouldn't work. And we were talking, and he said, I had that issue. Do you know what fixed it? He said, for some reason at home, my TV had two connections to the Wi-Fi. For some reason, it would then compete in conflicts all the time. He said, so if you go on, you do this. And I looked, and it was like, yeah, I've got two as well. I didn't know that. I couldn't find this thing. It wasn't obvious. It wasn't overt. Go somewhere else and just get, disconnect both of them, then just log on again once, and hey presto, the whole thing works. So apart from the, just the, it's annoying that this, I've got this expensive TV sat there and the thing wouldn't work. But what a great, it's just an example of when someone's done it, how they can just go, I've been in your shoes, try this. And I was, brilliant. I was like, my mum's going to be happy next time she comes round.
Absolutely, Chris. I mean, there are so many, and we could do this all day. Yeah. But I mean, there was just one last night, actually, I'll share, which is I was talking to a former colleague who said, oh, my brother-in-law is, he loves Disney. He takes his family there almost every year. They love the theme parks. Now, I happen to be going in a few weeks, taking my children. I'm a bit, time poor. I haven't had time to kind of do my research or understand, how to, to even get my ticket,
right.
etc. So my ex-colleague has already connected me with his brother-in-law, who is absolutely happy because he loves Disney, loves the brand, is fanatical about it. He's really experienced at the theme parks. I can now have that conversation, and I'm going to actually really get a much better experience when I go to Disney on that holiday. And that's the power of GigCX. It's to find those people all over the world who have that knowledge, who have that love and passion for your brands, and then empower them to help your customers. Yeah. I mean, it's transformational in terms of the experience.
Yeah. And I'm going to say one, well, not going to give an example more, but the first is it's a human nature now, right? So if I need to know something, or I want to get a recommendation or referral or word of mouth or something, what do? I pull out my phone, go onto WhatsApp, and I ask my group of friends, can anyone recommend me X, Y, Z? Or does anyone know how to 1, 2, 3? But when I look at that, that's that's what GigCX is, right? It's asking a bunch of people that can help using a digital form of communication that's convenient for me to ask the question. And I don't expect an answer that second. I expect a quick answer, but I want to have the engagement with someone, and they're able to answer when it's convenient for them. And that's what I do anyway. Let alone, it just makes sense, right? Anyway, we're going to turn this into a big pitch. That's not the idea, right? So let's move on. So I want to go on to a bit now about some of the problems that we're solving with the model. And the one of the findings in the report was that staffing issues are a huge driver for GigCX. I mean, with the pandemic and everything, you can see why this has become a big issue. but I'm interested in your perspective of why that's such a huge driver and what else has fueled it. And is it just about the pandemic, or is it about anything else?
Well, yeah, and in terms of the findings in the GigCX report, the point to this was that the number one reason that was given by CX leaders for was around staffing issues. So that 44% felt that finding qualified contact center talent is harder now than before the pandemic.
Okay.
So I think absolutely it's exacerbated by what's happened. There are lots of different things. I think we talked earlier about the changing dynamics of the workforce, the growth of the millennials and the Gen Zs, particularly the Gen Zs in the workforce, wanting to work differently. I think the pandemic, everybody knows lots about this in terms of the move to working from home. And then the desire, therefore, to go back and work in the contact center, it's really hard. People are not really wanting to go back to the office full time. They're quite happy to go back maybe 1 or 2 days a week, different circumstances, different scenarios, different industries. But that is something that's happening. We've heard about the Great Resignation. Lots of people having lots of time to think, lots of people enjoying more time with their family, friends, lots of people understanding and valuing their work-life balance more. So many contributing factors, but absolutely culminating in one big thing. It is not only because of a turnover and attrition, which compounds this problem, but actually attracting enough quality talent the world over. This isn't just a kind of developed market, the Europe, US, North America situation. This is happening in all markets for contact centers.
So do you think it's just about finding the same standard of person as perhaps that's now become harder to find? Is it also anything to do with the level of quality that they can bring based upon the brands that need to find skill sets? Is the problem for finding talent based upon just straightforward agents, or is it to do with a particular skill set?
Yeah, I think this links to the need to be agile. Any organization now needs to be agile. They need to be able to quickly find talent that has the skills that they need. So essentially, in the old world, I'm calling it old because it is the traditional model, recruitment takes time, and then you'll speak to competency. You might have 2 to 4 weeks training, and then speak to competency 6 to 9 months. Some of these large enterprises. And that just simply doesn't work anymore as a model, because the ability to flex that resourcing just isn't quick enough for the demands of the organization. So I think you're right to point out it's not just sort of the standard capability of skills. It's also people are expecting people with high level of skills to come in and hit the ground running. And you can do that much quicker with a GigCX model, because people can come in and tap in as they need to. And I think I was really interested in Sue Morris, her sort of feedback during the report. She's the VP of Customer Success at GitHub, which is the leading developer platform recently acquired by Microsoft. And GitHub has a huge amount of incredible talent across its organization. Developers are in high demand, and it's really important to them that they retain that staff. But actually, they've taken a view that they can't retain them. They need to support them to go part-time. They need to support them to be agile and flexible and offer gig work, because actually it's inevitable. So I think that's a very interesting strategy about just being very supportive of people making a different choice in how they want to work, and embracing it almost to really fuel the success of an organization rather than fighting it. There's no point anymore. I
love it. It is inevitable, and it's everyone saying it. Yeah. It's not a case of if anymore; it's when. Right. We've got a bunch more questions to ask you. I did promise my producer that we'd try and keep this to 30 minutes, and we're already bleeding over the edge. So I'm going to ask you 2 more quick questions, and I'll wrap up. So, firstly, just want to know what's next for GigCX? What's the biggest opportunities out there? Don't know who wants to take that one.
Well, I think we touched on it a little bit, Chris. I think I'm super excited about getting to a position where, CX leaders are really super excited about tapping into this incredible resource pool of your own customer base, but empowering them in the same way that you empower your agents. And for me, there's a reason we call the business limitless, right? Because that genuinely creates limitless opportunities for you as an organization. It means you no longer need to be constrained in terms of what you want to achieve as an organization by the resource pool that you have. Yeah. It means that you can think about, what goals do I want to have? And I know that I can support those goals with a completely flexible operating model. So it's about focusing on the outputs, not the inputs. And for me, that's incredibly exciting.
Excellent stuff. Okay, great. Right, last one. Roger, I'm going to go to you for this one. So there's probably a big answer to all of this because there's a lot to explore. But what can CX leaders do to begin exploring and looking at GigCX for their own business? What would you advise that they do?
Okay, well, I think just very quickly, I think always start small, begin to look for opportunities of what kind of inquiry types might fit this model. Yeah. And we, a business like Limitless can help in that kind of discovery stage when you're doing that. But think about who might the experts be, and you can imagine that absolutely the very best picture of what that expert might look like in terms of their skills, their background, their knowledge. Yeah. Think about what channels, digital channels, that they might be able to communicate to the customers in, and then think about what kind of inquiries would really lend themselves to people with great hands-on product knowledge, great product advocacy, and obviously a huge amount of empathy for the customers they're talking to. So typically look at those kind of customer support, troubleshooting, kind of tech support, definitely think about that. Think about onboarding, how experienced product users could help onboard new customers so they actually get more value from the products and services, get set up properly up front, and are less likely downstream to contact you, causing more cost further downstream. So think about those sorts of things. Absolutely, you need to be thinking about a partner with huge amount of experience. We talked a little bit earlier about pure gig versus kind of a lookalike gig model. So you need to be thinking about understanding the differences between the two. Are you looking for just a 0-hour employment contract, which is perhaps not that favorable for the people working in that environment? Or are you looking for a genuine platform that gives people the freedom to come and go in a true gig way, which links to my last point around look for the good gig principles. We have our own charter. It's absolutely essential. It means that we reward people fairly all over the world. It means that we don't have any kind of bias towards D&I in terms of our onboarding processes. And there are a raft of different things. So absolutely think about, because the people that are going to do work in the gig model on your behalf are highly likely, definitely in the Limitless case, going to be your customers. So if you're going to empower your customers to help support other customers, you need to make sure your partner is going to treat them as you would like them to be treated.
That's a great way to finish up. Well, we probably need to do a part 2 of this because I've got a whole bunch of other questions that I want to ask you and delve more into. But I think for now we're going to wrap up for the very first one. So thank you both for your time. As always, pleasure to talk to you in this channel as well as always. The reasons why you started Limitless, I hear something new every time I ask that question, or I hear you talk about it, and it's fascinating. And as time goes on, we all hear these little anecdotes of just why this whole thing works. And when you hear from the experts, what they've spent their money on, money that they probably couldn't have accessed in this way before. And the fact that it taps into people's desires to help, this is what people are wired to do that. And what we are Limitless is giving them is that mechanism to do it. So fascinating to hear. There's going to be a part 2 where we'll ask more questions, but for now we're going to say goodbye. So thank you for that amazing discussion. So stay tuned for our next episode. So what we're going to do is go in and have many more interviews with the rest of the report contributors. We're going to ask them their perspectives on their view of the world, how they see GigCX and what they see the future look like. Anyone listening, you want to download the big report and dive into all the detail, you can do that at limitlesstech.com. But for now, we're going to call that a wrap for our very first podcast. I hope it's been informative, lots to cover. And any inquiries, then drop us a line at limitlesstech.com, where I'm sure we'll be happy to help. But for now, we'll say goodbye and speak to you on the next episode.